Okay, so this is from Plato's Symposium. This is towards the end of the dialogue. This is Socrates talking after various other speakers have spoken about love.
Mm.
And this is also about knowledge and immortality. This is probably a pretty famous passage, and it's one of the my favorite things I've ever read. So this will be kind of a long paragraph. Well, if you believe that the natural object of love is what we have more than once agreed that it is, the answer won't surprise you. The same argument holds good in the animal world as in the human, and mortal nature seeks, as far as may be, to perpetuate itself and to become immortal. The only way in which it can achieve this is by procreation, which secures the perpetual replacement of an old member of the race by a new. Even during the period for which any living being is said to live and to retain his identity, as a man, for example, is called the same man from boyhood to old age, he does not, in fact, retain the same attributes, although he is called the same person. He is always becoming a new being and undergoing a process of loss and reparation, which affects his hair, his flesh, his bones, his blood, and his whole body. And not only his body, but his soul as well. No man's character, habits, opinions, desires, pleasures, pains, and fears remain always the same. New ones come into existence, and old ones disappear. What happens with pieces of knowledge is even more remarkable. It is not merely that some appear and others disappear, so that we no more retain our identity with regard to knowledge than with regard to the other things I have mentioned, but that each individual piece of knowledge is subject to the same process as we are ourselves. When we use the word recollection, we imply by using it that knowledge departs from us. Forgetting is the departure of knowledge, and recollection, by implanting a new impression in the place of that which is lost, preserves it and gives it a spurious appearance of uninterrupted identity. It is in this way that everything mortal is preserved, not by remaining forever the same, which is the prerogative of divinity, but by undergoing a process in which the losses caused by age are repaired by new acquisitions of a similar kind. This device, Socrates, enables the mortal to partake of immortality, physically as in other ways, but the immortal enjoys immortality after another matter. So do not feel surprised that every creature naturally cherishes its own progeny. It is in order to secure immortality that each individual is haunted by this eager desire and love. So that was the end of
Mm.
that paragraph, but actually that is not the part that I wanted to read. But it was interesting. Yeah, you probably know about. Yeah, but what do you think about that, first of all?
Well, as you were reading it, I was just kind of thinking like he's pretty much writing about nature and the natural cycle,
Hmm.
um, and how like human beings were still a part of that, like the
Right,
other
yeah.
creatures.
Yeah, this isn't the Christian world he's talking about where
Hmm.
there's this separation.
Yeah, yeah. So I just kind of thought of the cycle and life and death and how even though we're part of society, we're not really apart from nature still,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I
and it
think
still
part of
have
hmm.
sorry for interrupting, but
No, you weren't.
just and we still have those same like animal like desires of, with continuation.
Hmm. Yeah, I think part of the key to happiness or uh if you really want to be unhappy, do the opposite of this, but is to be natural. And of course, that's almost a cliche nowadays. And how to be natural and good and everything is kind of a question. It seems like some people really know how to do it, but some people maybe struggle a lot. And maybe sometimes those people are trying to be really good, but it's hard for them to
Mhm.
be good and natural. Maybe they have artificial ideas of being good, being selfless, and so forth. But sometimes in being selfless, you lose yourself. Yeah, and this is also a story within a story in the Symposium. This is Socrates' account of love that I think he was given by Diotima, who was like a mentor of
Mhm.
his, who's sort of a mystical figure.
Mhm.
I think she was a priestess or something. So then, yeah, I like that phrase. Each individual is haunted by this eager desire and love. And yeah, I'm really moved by that idea that we are trying to partake of immortality in some way.
Yeah, that struck me too, and it stood out.
There's a renewal that's, that we are trying, that we are trying to have take
Mhm.
place within us with knowledge, because we're constantly losing. And but if we constantly renew in a way that's like we're staying the same age or we're gaining immortality.
Yeah, it's like it's me thinking of the rebirth part of the cycle. Uh, so we come new again.
But I
I
don't know if
kind of
this is
thought
a
about.
cycle. I heard on a Vervaeke lecture today that the in the Eastern religions, this cycle of death and rebirth is actually viewed as something bad.
Hmm.
And it's not, we may kind of superimpose this onto our linear way of thinking to where we
Hmm.
think of the Judeo-Christian way is to think of history as as a process of moral progress,
Hmm.
and we may be superimposing this sort of Hindu way of thinking onto it, but actually, you
Hmm.
know, those two are supposedly different.
Oh, okay.
Cyclical way of thinking of history is that, yeah, there's no real development. The end is implied in the beginning, and it all happened already.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of nirvana, of cessation, is to get away from this endless, meaningless cycle of death and rebirth,
Hmm.
and to get out of that wheel that is
Hmm.
characterized by suffering.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's why it's bad.
So then after the part that I just read, it says, I was surprised at this account and said, You may be very wise, Diotima, but am I really to believe this? Certainly you are, she replied in true professional style. And if you will only reflect, you will see that the ambition of man provides an example of the same truth. So this is again linking nature with the higher things.
Hmm.
You will be astonished at its irrationality unless you bear in mind what I have said, and remember that the love of fame and the desire to win a glory that shall never die have the strongest effects upon people. For this, even more than for their children, they are ready to run risks, spend their
Hmm.
substance, endure every kind of hardships, and even sacrifice their lives. Do you suppose that Alcestis would have died to save Admetus, or Achilles to avenge Patroclus, or your Codrus to preserve his kingdom for his sons, if they had not believed that their courage would live forever in men's memory, as it does in ours? On the contrary, it is desire for immortal renown and a glorious reputation such as theirs that is the incentive of all actions. And the better a man is, the stronger the incentive. He is in love with immortality. Those whose creative instinct is physical have recourse to women and show their love in this way, believing that by begetting children they can secure for themselves an immortal and blessed memory hereafter
Mm.
forever. But there are some whose creative desire is of the soul, and who long to beget spiritually, not physically, the progeny which it is the nature of the soul to create and bring to birth. If you ask that, if you ask what that progeny is, it is wisdom and virtue in general. Of this, all poets and such craftsmen as have found out some new thing may be said to be begetters. But far the greatest and fairest branch of wisdom is that which is concerned with the due ordering of states and families, whose name is moderation and justice. When by divine inspiration a man finds himself from his youth up spiritually fraught with these qualities, as soon as he comes of age, he desires to procreate and to have children, and goes in search of a beautiful object in which to satisfy his desire, for he can never bring his children to birth in ugliness. In this condition, physical beauty is more pleasing to him than ugliness. And if in a beautiful body he finds also a beautiful and gracious and noble soul, he welcomes the combination warmly, and finds much to say to such a one about virtue and the qualities and actions which mark a good man, and takes his education in hand. By intimate association with beauty embodied in his friend, and by keeping him always before his mind, he succeeds in bringing to birth the children he has long desired to have. And once they are born, he shares their upbringing with his friend. The partnership between them will be far closer, and the bond of affection far stronger than between ordinary parents, because the children that they share, surpass human children by being immortal as well as more beautiful. Everyone would prefer children such as these to children after the flesh. Take Homer, for example, and Hesiod, and the other good poets. Who would not envy them the children that they left behind, children whose qualities have won immortal fame and glory for their parents? Or take Lycurgus, the lawgiver. Uh, he gave laws to Sparta, I think. And consider the children that he left at Sparta to be the salvation not only of Sparta, but one may also say of Greece. Among you Athenians, Solon is honored for the laws which he produced, etc., etc.
Mm.
Yeah,
So she's saying art and writings are the perfect children.
especially of states.
Uh-huh. Mm.
Yeah, it does. You do wonder why people make such effort that they do
Mhm.
when it's not for, when it's seemingly not for what you normally think of as a drive, like sex or power
Mm.
or money or, even glory, physical courage, glory.
Mm. And was she saying that like altruistic acts are often kind of selfish or
Did she say that?
self-interest?
I don't think
I
she
think she
said
said
that at all.
something about like a man sacrificing himself for his son and how uh that's like for glory or like for the story that will
Mm-hmm.
be told of him later. So
Yeah,
I
that's
wondered if
right.
she was implying that.
Well, it's not talking about altruism versus selfishness.
Yeah, but more like that to kind of like continue living on in some way.
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah.
course. But yeah, it's saying that it's a desire for
Mm.
immortality. immortal renown and a glorious reputation. Yeah, do you think your reputation matters to you in that way, or what do you think about that?
Mm. I know, like I feel like reputation is important, but to like a certain extent. Like I remember we read or talked about something before where a man was righteous in some way, but it kind of cost him his reputation and social standing, even though he was being virtuous in the end. Uh,
That might be
so
the thought experiment that Socrates
mhm.
does in Plato's Republic,
Oh, okay.
or I guess where Adamantus and Glaucon, I think, proposed to him, like,
Mhm.
try to make a strong case for justice to where it's
Mhm.
not about the fruits of justice, like normally people would have a good reputation, things like that.
Mhm.
But let's imagine a person who has the opposite of a good reputation and people blame him for
Mhm.
what they think he's done, et cetera, et cetera. But can you still make the case that it's better to be just than unjust? Because
Mhm.
Thrasymachus, who's sort of this contrarian, had argued, no, it's better to be perfectly unjust, by which I mean it's better to do injustice and get the benefits of that, like get bribes and whatever. And but to get be perfectly unjust means to also get away with it. And so
Mhm.
you end up having the good reputation for that a just person would normally have, and you get all the good stuff that the unjust person has.
Mhm.
So yeah, the other people I tried to say, well, let's argue for justice, but not for the fruit because of what you get for it, but because of it in itself.
Mhm.
But what were you saying?
Yeah, it's like a very difficult thing to kind of choose, but I would say the moderate thing is just to care about it, but not be so attached to it, which is very difficult to do in reality when society is kind of maybe you feel like it's just like a lot of pressure. I
Yeah.
think most people don't really have the courage or fortitude, I think, to to deal with, unfortunately.
Yeah, being attached, that's hard. So are you saying a little bit like, uh, yeah, do good, be just, but don't worry about the results?
Yeah, and which is yeah, or try not to be too attached to it. But like I said, it's very difficult, and I'm not sure I could do it either. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, what do you
what do
think
you think?
motivates you, or what is a good motivation?
Um, I don't know, like this may be kind of selfish in a way, but just their conscience, sense of conscience, because it's something you're gonna deal with yourself and yourself alone. Uh, so I think that, and I don't know, like maybe some uh, for myself an idea of like the universe or kind of God, kind of an all-knowing kind of being, uh, kind of knowing,
Like
or kind
what
of
they will think of you?
yeah, like I think it's maybe not so much like I'm thinking of it as like a big person above me, but uh, kind of like I don't know some well maybe kind of sounds like it, but some all-knowingness or something in the universe. Uh,
but they're being
Uh,
aware of your life and what you've done.
maybe, or just think of it me causing some kind of imbalance or injustice. Yeah, I guess what you're saying. Um, what else? Yeah, I don't know. Like it just wouldn't feel good, I guess, too, for most people, if you're empathetic enough to just be part of an injustice.
You think, yeah, crime is punishment in itself.
Like I used to be, well, I think I still am not against the death penalty, but recently I've started thinking that, uh, yeah, what you said, that is just a burden in itself to know for most normal people that do crimes, I guess, that is punishment enough to know that you did that and will have to kind of carry that burden. Um, so then that kind of helps me also understand people that are not for the death penalty, but more like life imprisonment or something of that nature. Uh, and I've wondered if maybe it's just worse to live with that than being granted death in several cases.
Yeah, suffering with your
Yeah,
tortured psyche.
yeah, yeah. So that's just been kind of a more recent thing I've been thinking about, kind of against that death penalty.
Mm. I mean, do you think that implies there's an inherent goodness to people?
I would say maybe for like maybe a good chunk of people in the death penalty, they're capable of that. So it would be a punishment. But I'm not
You
really
mean a
considering,
good proportion of people on death row or who
yeah,
people who would be
yeah,
executed?
or who did terrible things like that. Um, but yeah, it'd be harder though to think about what to do with the person that's not like that.
Some people don't have remorse like a psychopath or something.
Yeah.
Well, do you think you have a confidence in people like yeah, sense that they're decent?
Well, like I think it's something I've kind of worked on developing more. Uh, but when I was younger, I felt like I was had a lot of uncertainty and not caused anxiety around people. So I wasn't feeling that way for a long time.
Mm. How do you
And
think you gained that, or was it a regaining, or wait, did you just lose eventually the artificial distrust and go back to a natural trust?
yeah, I think it was just very basic, but just being or trying to be around people. Um, and during those times when I was around people, I would sometimes do like tests in my mind, or they didn't know I was testing them. And
Yeah,
after the interaction, I would just see nothing bad happened, and they seemed like a decent person so far.
that's good. What type of difficulty emotionally or physiologically were you going through as you were trying these tests?
Well, I just remember a lot of the physiological part. Just my heart was beating quickly, um, and I would just have kind of anxious kinds of thoughts of should I stay here or should I go? Like I really want to go and just be alone instead. And I still have some of that, but when you're a child, it's like you're in this tinier body and everything just feels a lot more intense
Yeah,
um, than it might actually be when you're an adult. So it just felt amplified. at that time.
Yeah. That's really good that you did that though. I'm
Yeah.
very big on exposure therapy, which is like facing your fears.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then, so I did that. And uh, then of course, like my church groups and study things kept me around people a decent amount of time.
Yeah, and if you're
Uh,
around people a lot, you're going to be exposed to little things that make you
yeah.
uncomfortable and sometimes bigger things.
Yeah. And then, by the time I got to college, the next biggest exposure to people was joining clubs and stuff. So yeah, I remember just having almost the same anxiety kind of feelings and wanting to leave, but I kind of stuck it through.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
You notice anxiety getting lessening over time.
I think so. Like it's still there. It's still there, and recently I probably haven't tried as much as I should have to keep working on that. Um, but yeah, just yesterday I was conversing with someone, and when I would usually just want to leave or be alone. So yeah, I kind of felt that same heart beating thing, but I just kind of forced myself to have open body language. Um, like I turned and faced the person as I sat. Uh, when
You had
normally
to
I would just
consciously
want to,
think about doing that.
yeah, I wanted, yeah, and I usually just want to turn back and get on my phone so that makes to
The
kind of send the
phone.
signal.
Oh, yeah, the phone is
Yeah,
pernicious.
yeah, it's kind of like a bad emotional support
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I think maybe for not just
It's not
myself,
an
but for a lot of
emotional
people.
support, it's emotional crutch.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's keeping us emotionally crippled and socially crippled.
yeah. But yeah, at the time, I noticed the person seemed very nice, and I told myself to just not be on the phone because that would be rude too.
That's good.
Uh,
You should do
And
this like at least 4 times a week.
yeah, but yeah, in the end, though, I felt good with the interaction, so
Yeah, of
I knew I
course.
wouldn't
We all
regret
do.
it. But it's just really hard to get past a few minutes when I'm like having the physiological stress reaction
Yeah, but
and
it's
the
not as
kind of the
bad as when you
flight.
were young, right?
No,
Good. Yeah, just keep doing it and you won't have it anymore, probably.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, just being around people, I think that's for a lot of life problems that we're facing. I think that just helps.
Okay. Maybe next time we'll talk a little bit more about motivation and various ways that people try to be immortal.
Yep.
Do you desire to be immortal in some way? To live on in others' minds?
Well, when I think about sometimes I get a little fear of that, so I think it's there. Uh,
You get a little fear of what?
Fearful of dying,
Hmm.
so I'm certain it's there. Then,
Do you have any thoughts about living on in others' minds? Like that glory, that reputation?
I think for myself, it's more of my attachment to people. So just people I love and like just never wanting that to end. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked about that before.
yeah, but who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if indirectly or somewhere beneath that there's what you talked about, just wanting to be on in people's minds.
Yeah, I really like those Buddhist kinds of reminders of like everything will end and that stoic meditation, that the last time meditation, there will be a last time that you speak any with a given person. This is nth time before the last time, and then there will be, you know n minus one or whatever, and more, more, more.
Mm.
Eventually
Yeah.
you will reach zero.
Yeah, I remember what was that movie we watched about the guy that chose to be in this fake world made by that planet to be with his wife
Oh,
forever?
Solaris. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think about that movie sometimes and I kind of see like a kind of maybe dark, possessive, undeveloped side of myself
What do you
wanting to
mean?
do that with people. Mm, like we just live in some happy worlds forever and ever.
Yeah, it's a really sick thought, but it's very understandable, and it's sickly comforting.
Yeah. Yeah, so while I was kind of disappointed in his decision in the movie, like when I think back on it, I kind of understand it and kind of relate to it.
It's also, though, he's not living with her, he's living with an image of her, which is even
Yeah.
more sick.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah, I
it's a
forgot that
very
part.
detailed and informed image from his interactions with her. And you could even say it's informed by maybe things that he's heard about her from others when he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't around, so it's an idea of not only who she was with him, but who she was with some others, even to a good extent.
Yeah.
But still, it's not her.
Yeah.
And inherent to her is that she dies, which she
Mm,
already has.
yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
accepting her totally. It's not accepting her as not anymore, as being dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Like now that you remind me of that part, it kind of reminds me of like uh AI as a kind of Solaris. Uh
Giving you
especially
what
with
you want,
yeah.
reflecting what you
But
want back.
yeah, especially when I've already heard stories of spouses or girlfriends finding that their letter is attached to this AI thing on their phone for emotional support. And yeah, it's just creepy thinking that is just grabbing your ideas of what you want and just kind of regurgitating that back to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a different sickness. That's much less sort of tragic and more sinister
Yeah.
than the guy Montauk or whatever his name is in Solaris.
Mm-hmm.
Solaris. I think I'm Guy Montauk. I think that's Fahrenheit 451.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, this sort of narcissistic. Yeah, I think back to Plato and how like the most unhealthy ways of being are the most immature, the most uncontrolled, and how something about happiness and goodness for a country as well as a individual human being has a lot to do with development and discipline, virtue. But yeah, you could say there's like a beast, there's a desiring part of us that doesn't want any of that, that doesn't want us to be as good of a human being as we can be, and instead wants to be a wild, infantile id. Well, any last thoughts on that before we go on in our life cycles?
Not at the moment. But yeah, I've enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I really like that Platonic idea, that kind of linking the natural life and desire for progeny to immortality, and to include our sort of soul children.
Mm,
Well, yeah, maybe we'll talk more about that next time.
sounds good.
Okay, well, Hope you take care. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.